stepping back, talking about 8 ways that China can become an innovation-driven economy. It starts with Joseph Schumpeter, the famous economist. And when he coined the term the innovation economy in 1942, that famed economist could not possibly have known or imagined precisely what the state of technological innovation and global connectedness would look like another century into the future. Today, however, we have additional visibility into what 2042 might look like. Schumpeter's insight was that a concentration on institutional innovation, investment in human capital, entrepreneurship, subject of this meeting, technological progress could lead to faster and further economic growth than could a pure focus on increasing capital and labor inputs. Now, the modern world has indeed grown into Schumpeter's insight, and of course, China is no exception. The breathtakingly successful efforts of innovators to both create vastly improved technology and agree to standards, making such new technology available to so many people at such widely affordable levels should be a cause for celebration. As an important stakeholder in the international community, China has achieved considerable progress in crafting policies that have fostered the development of new and promising innovations. And yet, impediments to China's continued development remain. China's path to become an innovation-led economy will be a rocky and steep one without proper policies that favor greater levels of innovation for this new standards-based era. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak today about these important issues of innovation, interconnectivity, and the choices that China can make as a key participant in the global economy. Today, I'd like to offer 8 practical steps that China should consider taking in order to become an innovation-led economy. Number 1, if I've got my slides working right here. Number 1, start with don't follow my country. Don't follow the United States in standard-setting rules. China should avoid following the U.S. in this regard. To that end, China's leaders should dispel a common myth regarding the U.S. standard-setting process. A myth pervades, in fact, that the historical standard-setting process employed by my country's Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers was so broken that the seminal standard-setting organization was mandated to change their approach. That's a myth. IEEE's SSO is indeed one of the largest and most impactful SSOs in history, having standardized both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. IEEE, for some reason, determined that their patent policy required an overhaul and made significant changes to it in 2015. These changes included specifically mandating the consideration of theories that diminish patent value and also affect in negative ways reasonable royalty determinations regarding patents. The SSO IEEE also prohibited holders of standard essential patents from seeking injunctions against those who infringe standard essential patents after negotiations have been attempted, adjudication has been completed, and a first-level appellate review has been conducted. So all those requirements have a tremendous depressive effect on innovation. The truth is that there is no evidence that these controversial policy changes were necessary or even prudent. Immediately prior to the implementation of the new guidelines, IEEE had created 802.11, which we have come to know as Wi-Fi. Perhaps the most successful standard in the history of mankind, and almost certainly the most successful IEEE standard, 802.11 has driven an explosion of connectedness and broadband access on a global scale. It's unclear why IEEE felt that its next act should be to discard the policies that drove their most successful creation in favor of new rules that appear to endorse implementers of standards over innovators of standards. Now, the Electronics Intellectual Property Center, the EIPC, here in China, of China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, also issued new draft guideline, a new template for draft guidelines for intellectual property policies in the SSO context, also in 2015. EIPC's template had at one point similarities to the new IEEE policy. However, EIPC ultimately and wisely withdrew the proposal. And while EIPC here in China averted the imbalance that their proposed template may have affected, IEEE's changes quite affirmatively favor the interests of implementers of standards over the interests of innovators. There's much to be said for the ageless sage advice, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's imperative in this regard for China's SSOs to consider their policy moves carefully so as to avoid ill-advised updates that cater to the partisan interests of one constituency over another and risk doing more harm than good. Item 2, when theory conflicts with reality, choose reality. China should discard the misguided theory of royalty stacking, not a theory that was created in China, to be clear, but a theory that was created in other parts of the world. China should discard that theory and instead ground its innovation policy in market-based empirical evidence. This plausible-sounding theory of royalty stacking claims that the proliferation of standard essential patents will necessarily mean royalties sought by each SEP holder will stack on top of one another. The theory portends that these royalties will grow to unaffordable levels for implementers, threatening profits and progress and competition. The contention is that products employing those patents would be priced at levels so high on a cumulative basis that their cost of manufacture would become commercially untenable. The truth is that royalty stacking doesn't actually exist. It's just a theory. It doesn't exist. From 1994 to 2013, the global average selling price of mobile devices actually fell 8.1% per year on average. The number of devices sold skyrocketed 20.1% per year. The number of device manufacturers grew from 1 to 43, and market concentration fell as the number of major manufacturers rose from 6 to 9. Yet while all of this was happening, the average gross margin of standard essential patent holders remained constant. So despite the dire warnings, there has been absolutely no sign of royalty stacking in the mobile telecommunications industry for the past 20 years. What the stacking hypothesis fails to take into account is that there are many fair and workable royalty arrangements available. The appropriate royalty metric for the subcomponents of a larger technology is the true technical contribution that each individual investment makes to the final standard. In a market economy, the market price of any product will be the amount of value ultimately created by combining the ingredient inventions into the product. And policymakers in China would be wise to reject the baseless theory of royalty stacking. Sound empirical evidence instead and actual market practice are far sturdier guideposts than hypothetical theories. Simply put, when theory conflicts with reality, choose reality. Number 3, you get what you incent. China should adopt a robust innovation policy that creates real incentives for innovation and avoids artificial, non-market undervaluation of innovation that serves only to discourage and exacerbate misappropriation. Importantly, in charting a path towards greater domestic innovation, policymakers in China would be wise to steer clear of myths about the role of what's called the smallest saleable patent practicing unit in the standards area, or the SSPPU. The SSPPU is known as the smallest component that practices a given patent within a larger multi-component device. Think of a small chip in a smartphone as an example. Now, some mistakenly contend that the SSPPU provides the definitive measure for determining patent license royalties in all cases and all contexts. Marketplace participants espousing this view are invariably implementers who would, of course, prefer to pay low or no royalties for the technologies that others have labored hard to create. Proponents of this myth have taken an evidentiary rule created in the specific context of the U.S. jury trial and attempted to extend it to all patent infringement damages determinations, including in the SEP licensing context. Doing so, they seek to free ride off of others' toil. It's just that simple. The artificial extension of this theory is economically unsound. SSPPU theory ignores the value of synergies and downstream complementary effects created by pairing patented technology with other components into a final product. The chips that allow tablets and laptops, for example, to utilize the IEEE 802.11 Wi-Fi standard cost only a few dollars, but the value access to the Wi-Fi technology standard contributes to these final products is, of course, very substantial. It's absurd to contend that the value of a laptop with wireless internet access only exceeds the value of a laptop without Wi-Fi by a few dollars that manufacturers charge for the Wi-Fi chips. Policymakers in China should reject the SSPPU myth because it's nothing more than an attempt by implementers of standards to obtain technology developed by the innovative efforts of others at improperly low royalty rates, below the rates that would be obtained through legitimate licensing arrangements. Accepting this myth leads to a perverse innovation policy that unfortunately rewards innovation while discouraging, rewards misappropriation while discouraging innovation. And that brings us to number 4. Reward trademark innovators and discourage squatting. China should move away from its current system of tolerating trademark squatting to a more market-oriented system that creates incentives for Chinese innovators to develop new and differentiated brands and trademarks. Regrettably, trademark infringement in China has proliferated in recent years, and occurrences of trademark squatting have surfaced with increasing regularity. Many firms seeking to do business in China have found that their trademarks have already been registered by local businesses or squatters who are willing to release the marks only if they're paid off by the actual owners. Establishing a more market-oriented trademark system in China would yield important benefits, encouraging greater innovation in brand development in China, driving awareness of unique Chinese marks, furthering legitimate trademark owners' interests, and most importantly, benefiting Chinese consumers who would be able to more reliably differentiate among products and services and make better purchasing decisions. Item number 5, embrace patent linkage and drive healthcare innovation. Now, turning to life sciences for just a moment, China should adopt an effective patent linkage system, a legal framework that enables innovative life sciences research companies to effectively enforce patent rights while simultaneously enabling generic companies to effectively challenge patent rights and achieve reliable market entry. With no patent linkage system currently in place, China's status quo framework, unfortunately, has invited low-quality imitation and has stifled innovation. One result has been that China's pharmaceutical industry is lagging behind modern international standards. Unlike the above innovation discouraging moves that I've talked about previously, the patent linkage system can incent both new drugs and treatments and reduce the prices of existing drugs and treatments. All good news for Chinese consumers. It also would help the Chinese FDA, which would benefit because it would avoid being named as defendant in patent infringement actions. And finally, the patent linkage system would encourage pharmaceutical businesses to invest in R&D, new drugs, or first-to-market generic drugs rather than wastefully imitating existing drugs. So patent linkage system, very positive move and a strong recommendation for China. And number 6, you get what you incent, part 2. It's time to move away from incentives that drive excessive patent filings. And I'll move to closing here quickly as I'm running out of time. We can come back and discuss this in the in our Q&A if we have time to do that. Item number 7, very briefly, don't mix administrative law and enforcement of patents. And then I'll spend my last minute here on item 8, which is you get what you pay for, part 3, strengthen patent value to tangibly incent innovation. China should promote and adopt legislation that affords greater value for patents as a means to incent innovation. Policymakers in China should reject the contention that patents are primarily preemptive in nature and that innovation can flourish where patents have low value. A narrative advocating low value for patent rights capitalizes on society's collective short-sightedness. And this isn't an issue about China per se, it's an issue all over the world. Same thing in my country. The preemptive aspect of patents garners outsized public attention because the grant of a temporary exclusive right to patent owners is the feature that is most readily apparent to the public. Higher prices of today are easily lamented, while the unquantifiable potential of the innovation of tomorrow is less readily appreciated. But the patent system goes beyond all of that, and it's worked well for centuries. Thomas Edison once proclaimed that his, quote, main purpose in life was to make enough money to create even more inventions. In the long term, society gets a great deal. It is far too easy to complain about the price of research and development once an invention is in the marketplace, but much more difficult to contemplate the lack of advancement in an industry where patent protection is not available. In order to accelerate China's development to become a market-led or an innovation-led economy, policymakers in China should strengthen patent value to promote innovation and long-term well-being of China's citizens. Thank you very much.